Hi everyone. So I'm finally getting around to making part 2 of my advice video for getting into vet school. So part 1 was for high school students. Part 2 is going to be mainly for college students, specifically like freshman, sophomore college students. Real quick, if you didn't go watch part 1, then I'm gonna just give you a little advice that I had from it that I think is still super applicable for freshman, sophomore, junior, senior college students. Note everything. Keep a journal or a document, something like that, of what all you do and for how long you do it. So like if you volunteer at a vet clinic, write that down, write down where, for how long, and what you did. Just kind of keep a journal, Word document, Google document, something like that with all that information. It will help you so much when filling out your MCAT. And if you want more information on that, I would recommend you go watch part 1. So now moving on to the advice for college students. Specifically for freshmen, mainly, I would say plan out your courses before meeting with your academic counselor or your school counselor, whatever. And if you see me looking off, it's because my laptop's right here. So your counselor, if you're pre-vet, they probably have a better idea of like vet school requirements. If you're not pre-vet, a lot of counselors probably don't have a great idea of what vet schools require you to take. They're probably just looking at your degree, being like, oh yeah, you're meeting your degree requirements. And newsflash, a lot of vet schools, even if you're pre-vet, some vet schools will have requirements that aren't on your degree requirements. So you still have to like go take these courses, even though they're not required for your degree. So I would say definitely take it into your own hands and make sure you're meeting all the vet school requirements as well as your degree requirements, but vet school requirements for sure, because it might be something that only you get to like keep track of, not necessarily get to, but have to keep track of. Some counselors see that as like being your requirement because they're only there to advise and make sure you're meeting your degree requirements. So definitely make sure, take it into your own hands and make sure that the courses that you're taking or plan to take will be ones that are required for vet school, and vice versa. If it's required for vet school, make sure that you'll be able to take it at some point. But they just have a lot of students under them. Even if you're pre-vet, they have a lot of students under them, and sometimes things get overlooked. It personally happened for me. I needed to take genetics. I had planned out my whole courses, but my senior year, they moved genetics. They like canceled it for one semester, and of course it was my last semester, the semester I needed to graduate. They got rid of animal genetics, and animal breeding and genetics it counted towards my degree, but not for vet school requirements. So I had to go take human genetics. It was a whole mild little fiasco, but yeah, so it worked out, and I don't blame my counselor, but I'm just saying some things get overlooked, and so be proactive and go try to like figure it out before something does happen. So my second piece of advice is to get involved and get experience. I had this for the high school students as well, but it matters more for undergrad, college, I would say, than it does high school. You're going to be applying to a vet school, and like when you fill out the MCAT, it will allow things from like your high school years, but they really want to see what did you do during college, how involved were you, things like that. So Pre-vet club is a great option if your school has it. I do highly recommend that because it's people going through the same experiences as you. There's going to be upperclassmen who are applying, have applied, have been accepted to vet school, things like that. They'll have usually vets come in and talk to you. So definitely recommend the pre-vet club, but keep in mind it is not the only club option for you. And if you're interested in other things, even if it's not like vet related or animal related, I still recommend you get involved with it because vet schools want to see that you were involved in things and you had like a passion for things. So definitely get involved with clubs, sororities, things like that. I wasn't in a sorority. That wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't something I was interested in. So I chose not to do that. Some people did. And I would say don't just do something because, oh, it'll look great on your application. Do it, get involved because you genuinely want to. My other thing is continue getting vet clinic experience if you haven't. If you haven't, this is when it really is crunch time. You'll need to have some experience for applying to vet school. Most require, I think, a minimum of like 300 hours, but some require more, some require less. So just look into those school requirements and make sure you're meeting the hours required by those vet schools that you're wanting to apply to. But if you're a freshman or sophomore, you don't have much time because you have to have this experience before you apply to vet school. And you usually fill out the MCAT starting your junior year. So if you're a sophomore, you have like maybe a year to start gaining experience. And if you're a freshman, 2. So I recommend going ahead and starting to get that vet clinic experience now. And I would say try really hard to get a variety of experiences. A lot of vet schools want to see that you've tried different things. Even though you might know you only want to do small animal or only want to do equine, it's going to be good if you can go say like, hey, I worked at an emergency clinic or I worked at a mixed animal clinic and just tried some things out, because then you'll have a stronger case for when they ask you what you want to do. You can say, I tried this and this and this, and this is the one that I liked best. And then you can talk about why you liked that best, like what things you preferred in that one over the others. So it looks really good. Vet schools they really eat it up when you say like, oh, I worked for the USDA, things like that. Another thing I would recommend is to attempt to take enough credit hours to be considered a full-time student, which I think for most schools is a minimum of 12 credit hours. Take more if you can and like you comfortably can and financially can. But the reason is because vet schools want to see that you can handle being a full-time student while getting this clinical experience, while being involved in clubs and extracurricular activities. Because if you can handle all that now, odds are you'll be able to handle going to vet school and being a full-time vet student at the point that you reach that. So they really, really like to see that you are doing a ton. It's not necessary that you take 12 credit hours or more. Some people can't. Some people are like parents. Some people have to work full-time in order to be able to financially survive. And if you can show that, like you can prove that, and then show to the schools, the vet schools, that that's your reason for not being able to be a full-time student, they're going to be way more understanding. So it varies on a case-by-case basis. Not everyone's going to be able to take 12 hours or more, but some people can, and if you can, that's going to look great. And if you can't, it's still going to be fine. It's going to be fine as long as you have a good reason for it. Most vet schools are not going to look at someone who wasn't working, wasn't involved in clubs, and also was only taking like 5 credit hours. They don't love to see that. They just love to see that you were being drowned in all of the things that you were active in and doing. My other piece of advice, I mentioned this in the high school video as well, but keep your GPA up. GPA is a big thing. It's not everything, but it's a big thing. And it's also going to help a lot with scholarships, finances. Yeah, there's no downfall to having a good high GPA. So I recommend definitely trying to put a lot of work into studying and keeping your GPA up. My 5th piece of advice is to try to take your harder classes earlier. The MCAT, that is again what you will be using to apply to vet schools through, and you'll typically do that your junior year, or at least the year before you'll be graduating. For most people, that's not the case for all, but for most people that's the case. So it has you put in all your classes that you have taken and the ones that you will be taking. So if you can try to take the harder ones first, the harder required courses first, then vet schools can look at that and see, hey, in like organic chemistry, she got an A or a B, or chemistry, physics, things like that. Because those are the ones that typically tend to fail people out of like going into vet school. Those might be the ones that people do fail the course, or they get a D, which vet schools don't accept as an acceptable grade. So if you can prove that you've taken these harder courses and you passed them, it's going to look really good, as opposed to someone who maybe still has to take like OChem 2 and biochemistry and maybe physics 2. If you have all those really difficult classes and they're stacking up, vet schools are going to maybe look at that, unless they have really good grades otherwise. Like if you passed OChem 1 with like an A, flying colors, they'll be more understanding of that. But if you got like a C, or you were kind of borderline, and now you're saving OChem 2 and biochemistry for later, like your senior year, they might be a little bit more iffy on whether or not they're going to accept you. That's kind of just my personal way of looking at it. I know some other people who look at it that way as well. Everyone has their own preferences, and maybe some people don't want to bombard themselves freshman year and take really difficult classes, but I personally believe don't overload yourself and like then overdo it, but take some of the harder classes, like your freshman year, some your sophomore year, space it out really well. But I think it helps a lot if vet schools can see that you took the really hard ones and you passed them. One other part to that is, since like your junior year, you'll be filling out the MCAT and also taking secondary exams like maybe the GRE, CASPer, possibly the MCAT, depending on what schools you're going to be applying to. You probably don't want to be having to do all of that and study for that, focus on that, while also taking a ton of extremely difficult classes. So kind of just to go with that. And then your senior year, you'll be interviewing at vet schools. And so same thing, you don't want to be focusing on like preparing for and interviewing at vet schools while also trying to take a ton of really difficult classes. So again, might just be my preference, but I think it's a pretty good thing to try and focus in heavily your freshman and sophomore year on your courses, and then allow yourself a little bit more freedom junior, senior year. Also, want to really quickly add, just because you get accepted to a vet school does not mean that you can then slack off. If you get a D or an F in a required course, then they can revoke your acceptance. So yeah, just because you get accepted doesn't mean you can be like, oh, now I can get D's. And this one is specifically for sophomores mainly. I recommend you do start looking into secondary required exams such as the GRE or MCAT or CASPer. Some of those, like the MCAT, is going to be a harder exam that you're gonna potentially have to put a lot of time into. The GRE as well. CASPer is not really one that you do a lot of studying for, but it's still something you probably need to look into and figure out the dates when you need to take it, and then kind of like how you take it. So if you're a sophomore, I would say start looking into those secondary exams that are required by the vet schools you want to apply to, and figuring out dates of when you can take it, what an expected good score is, or one that's like required, a minimum required score by the vet school. And then, yeah, just study for them if it's an exam that you need to study for, and kind of start planning out when you're gonna expect to take those, because I recommend you take them a little bit earlier. That way you can see how you did, and if you didn't do well enough, you have enough time to go retake them versus panicking and then having to submit a lower score. If you give yourself enough time, you might be able to retake it and then get a higher score and submit that on your MCAT instead of panicking and not having enough time. So I think that's all the tips and advice that I have for freshman and sophomore college students. If you're in that group, you're getting pretty close to starting to apply to vet school. That's super exciting. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much for watching this video. I should be getting, hopefully, things are kind of crazy. Just started a whole new round of classes, just finished week 1. It's kind of crazy, but I'm hoping I can probably have the junior senior video out soonish. So stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and bye.